Imagine the Indian Navy from the east coast of Africa to the west coast of Australia, from the North Arabian Sea to the South China Sea. The Indian Navy is actually being looked at as the net service provider across the region. I mean, this is not what we want. This is what the world expects of Indian Navy and of India, given that we are in such a commanding position. But what are the challenges that we face in this battle, and a tough battle, given that the Dragon is trying to expand its footprints in our waters, given that Pakistan, China, Tango, and especially in the field of Navy, new technology that's coming in, underwater gliders. Admiral Dinesh Tripathi, it is such a privilege for us to have you on this on our special India Today show. We want to understand from you, the Chief of the Naval Staff, what you consider the biggest challenge, given what you've seen in the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Thank you very much, Gaurav. Thank you, Rahul. First of all, I want to thank the India Today group for inviting me. And I'm delighted to be here at the 21st edition of India Today Conclave. Now, my generation of Indian citizens have grown up actually with India Today. I remember in 1975, your magazine, India Today, came out with the first edition. And now you're celebrating the 50th year, so congratulations. It was a monthly magazine. If all of you remember, I think it was costing 2 rupees 50 paisa then. Became a fortnightly a few years later. And then a weekly magazine of repute today, covering, giving a comprehensive coverage. So I would, and subsequently, of course, you delved into the electronics, digital, and TV domains at particular periods of time in our journey. So in the last 50 years, I would not be too wrong to say that the growth of India today has been co-terminus with the growth of today's India. And that I have seen it physically going, especially in the last decade or so. So congratulations on that first. Coming to your questions per se, we in the Indian Navy take pride that we are a learning organization. And therefore, we keep a weather's eye on what's happening in geopolitics around the world, what's happening in the security domain. This is for us to prepare for what is to come, and also what is not probably seen right now, but what may come few years from now. So, if I have to summarize 3 takeaways from the ongoing conflicts, I think the first would be that the use of technology and Russia-Ukraine war especially has demonstrated very clearly, or rather busted the myth that there are going to be short and swift wars. Because the use of technology now has enabled a smaller or a untested opponent to match a bigger opponent, especially if supported and with the kind of resilience which has been demonstrated by the smaller actor. So that is the first one which we have to be careful. Jury is still out. That can one or two, second one, of course, you know what I'm talking about, can these two conflicts conclusively prove that there are not going to be short or swift wars? But that is the one takeaway which we have taken. Second is, in times of conflict, you have to demonstrate sustainability. And for that, there will be disruptions in, supply chain. There will be disagreements, and that leads me to the second takeaway, that we need to move towards Atmanirbharta, because in this geopolitics, relations change. Sometimes in times of crisis, even friends and allies would give preference to their needs, and you may not get weapons and sensors if you are dependent on somebody else. And of course, the third one is that it is not only the strategy of self-reliance and Atmanirbharta, but also the pace of self-reliance and Atmanirbharta. And therefore, we have to move fast from the technology induction, from in the drawing board to the battlefield. So these are the three broad takeaways which we take from Russia-Ukraine war, as also from the other war which is going on.
Sir, given the fact that technology is changing at such a rapid pace, questions are being asked about the utility of, say, aircraft carriers, which used to be the pride of any blue water navy in the past. And now with the prospect of supersonic missiles, laser weapon systems, asymmetric warfare, the concern that are we using old world doctrine to build up for a new world war? And the concern that some of what would earlier have dominated the seas, are they now frankly just sitting ducks? How do you look at this?
So Rahul, I would just make two statements. One is that we are all aware that the nature of warfare remains the same. And what is that? That is use of force and use of violence to prevail upon the adversary, to impose your will on him or. So that remains even today, irrespective of whatever else is happening. But the character of warfare is changing. And it has been changing at various intervals in our history. But in the last few years, especially in 21st century, this change has accelerated largely because of technology. So there have been doubting Thomases who have commented upon particular kind of platform, particular kind of weapon systems, whether it is still valid or not. And those are valid questions, because people must ask, because there is money involved and there is capability involved. We in the Indian Navy have very clear and futuristic capability development plan with us. Studying whatever else is happening around us, we have made this plan. Of course, it goes through iteration at various intervals. Even now it is going through because of what we have seen in the last 4 or 5 years. The use of unmanned vehicles, etc., etc. Those things have to be incorporated in our capability development plan, and we are taking actions to ensure that whatever capability we introduce, those are proven and those will be put to use when the nation demands.
So let me reframe the question. When the Russia-Ukraine war started, it suddenly emerged that this idea that the Russian army could send in their tanks and dominate Ukraine came apart, especially in the face of armed drones. We haven't seen a recent big war between two modern navies. My question and concern is, if this war were to start, say whether it's in the Taiwan Straits or wherever else, will we find that the nature of naval warfare has as dramatically altered from what our military planners envision naval warfare to be? That some of the biggest ships, the most powerful ships, do they suddenly become sitting ducks? Are you confident, for example, that our aircraft carriers would be able to protect themselves and be as effective in the face of some of these asymmetric weapons?
So that is a hypothetical question. So
War game.
Yeah. So I would also be bordering on a hypothetical answer. Please bear with me. We don't know what will happen if the crisis which you are alluding to in Taiwan Strait, as to how it will play out in whatever time frame. But one thing is certain, that nations are putting in money to develop the platforms after a lot of study. It is not just on whims and fancies of one individual or one service. It is a whole of government decision which is taken, that we need to invest in with different kind of weapons, platforms, etc., etc. And coming per se to the Navy, we are the force which operate on surface, we operate in the air, we operate underwater, and of course add to that the cyber domain, the space. So we are a 5-dimensional Navy actually. And therefore, if you have to deter, the whole thing starts with deterrence. If you have to deter an adversary so that he cannot or he should not infringe on our sovereignty, or you should not do anything which is untoward, which is not accepted to us as a country, then we have to ensure that we have the deterrence capability. And those deterrence capabilities are exemplified in terms of weapons, sensors, equipment, and capabilities which the Navy has got. The second, of course, is we need to deploy, and that is physical deployment of assets. And a Navy which cannot deploy cannot deter. You cannot sit in harbor and say, I have got this capability. So you have to demonstrate, you have to go out at sea, and you have to demonstrate the capability, whether it is in terms of surface warfare, undersea warfare, air warfare, space warfare. So all kinds of things you have to actually demonstrate. And in that sense, the platforms which you have named, I think they have still got a role to play. There is adequate, I would say, redundancy in terms of securing those assets, and especially in a maritime domain where assets are moving, 500 miles within 24 hours. So you may be detected. Today, you can be just assured the battle space is so transparent that everything and anything can be detected. It is a given.
When we look at the battlefield and how it's changing, there's a hostile China, and that China is trying this string of pearls that has been written about very extensively, Hambantota, they're trying to get more bases in Gwadar and in Myanmar, and they're trying to bring in their underwater gliders. How big a challenge is that if we can detect them in Malacca Straits is one strategy, but then once they come in and they have bases here, is that a huge challenge for us?
So we are, like I said, as the Navy, we are monitoring what's our adversaries and friends are doing in all domains. You talked about underwater gliders. We'll leave it for the time being. We have got a very good maritime domain awareness through various means. And therefore, at any point of time, we are aware that in our area of interest, which is largely the Indian Ocean region, who is doing what, where, when, and how. So the first part, I think, is very well covered. We are aware that China has increased its presence. And by the way, PLA Navy is the largest Navy in terms of number today. It happened a couple of years back. It has surpassed the US Navy in terms of numbers. So we are fully aware that what Chinese Navy is doing. They have increased their presence from 3 ships when they started in 2008 under the garb of anti-piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden. And today we find at any point of time there are 6 to 8 capable warships which are there in various parts of IOR. Add to that various scientific research vessels. There are satellite tracking ships. There are, deep sea fishing vessels, many of them with dual use information gathering missions. So all that we were fully aware. We are monitoring each ship, what he or she is doing. The problem which you are, I think, alluding is that Chinese are come here. They are not acting alone. They are, of course, helping our Western neighbor. I am not surprised. So should you be. This has not happened, accidentally. China has always been helping Pakistan at various levels, whether it is political, whether it is economic, or military. And especially in the last 2 decades, in maritime domain I can talk about, it is happening in the land and air domain also. Yes. They have provided them with real capabilities in terms of 3 + 4, 7 frigates. There is a missile tracking ship. And now, starting next year, they are going to supply them 8 Yuan-class brand new submarines. So we are not surprised about that. Now, what we can do about it is what I said, that that is out of our hands. What we need to do is that we have to find answers to ensure that even this collusivity, if it were to happen, we should not be found wanting, we should not be surprised, and that is what we are doing.
Admiral Tripathi, I ran a visualization which projects into the future the naval strength of the PLN, which is the People's Liberation Navy, the Pak Navy bases the augmentation that they're getting from across the Himalayas, and where the Indian Navy would be. Because one of the big challenges is, what do we want given the vast list of requirements and the limited budgets that we have? What is most important? So it's at the back of our screen right now. This goes back from 2023 and goes out to 2040. Basically, so that I can explain what you're seeing, if all of what is already in the public domain gets inducted into the Indian, the Pakistani and the Chinese and the US navies, where will things stand at 2040? So basically, given the speed of induction and the announcements that have already been made, the visualization that we ran suggests that the Chinese Navy could be 530 plus warships by 2040, which is bigger than the US Navy as well, which would be around 380 odd warships, and the Indian Navy, which would be around 185. Now, if they buy something new, I don't know, but from what we know and has been announced, and the Pak Navy would be around 60. Now, that is, and what we are seeing from the People's Liberation Navy is the biggest build-up in the history of maritime build-ups. They've essentially created an Indian Navy just in the last 10 years. That's the scale of the build-up that we're seeing. How concerned are you about that? Because that's a lot of force being aggregated against you. And what's your strategy to defend us?
So you're bang on target. The PLA Navy has created one Indian Navy in last decade plus, and which is not so good news for us. But there are three things, Rahul. One is numbers per se, and we don't believe in counting, because numbers have their own disadvantages. The second is the capability, what those platforms build in, whether it is ships, submarines, aircraft, etc. So those are things which has to be analyzed. They have to be war-gamed, what capability they are bringing. And the third is the effect which they will have in actual operations. And that depends upon this very basic things called geography. What is the geography of this area? It is predominantly, it is Indian Ocean. It is India is jutting out. So I would like to believe that we are blessed to have this kind of geography where in the Indian Ocean region, we will always have the so-called upper hand as far as geography is concerned. Because the Chinese Navy, if it has to come from wherever it is to come, there is something called, you must have read about tyranny of geography. And that cannot be circumvented by any amount of force. Because finally, the platforms has to fly, platform has to sail to come into Indian Ocean region. And we have got means and measures to track them whenever they leave, wherever they're supposed to leave. So that part is, I think, generally under control. Can they put everything what they have got to Indian Ocean region? We don't know. It is again a hypothesis which we can war game. But you can be just assured that we are aware of what is happening, whether it is China or Pakistan. And I'll just take 1 minute more. What you didn't ask me is that how does the, what is the effectiveness of Indian Navy as far as the nation's growth is concerned? Because that is what I think navies are meant for. Navies are meant for to ensuring that there is complete tranquility, peace and maritime security so that our trade, energy, our strategic influence, our connectivity remain unhindered. And that is where we feel our role is. We are not so much bothered about who else is doing what. Because that is a factor of many things, intent, money, etc., etc.
But let's run a simulation just for a moment. During the 1971 war, the Indian Navy, to its credit, was effectively able to blockade the Pakistani Navy in the Karachi harbor. They weren't able to get out. We had them cornered. If, and given that China is following a pearl of string strategy, if the Chinese Navy were to attempt something similar on the Indian peninsula, Arabian Peninsula, will we be able to prevent it from happening, given the sheer scale of the weapon systems and the platforms that they're building?
I think so. I think I'm fairly sure about it for the reasons which I mentioned, because they will have to support. They will have to support their forces thousands of miles away from wherever they are coming from, and we have the advantage of the geography. So that part I think is not too much bothering us. As far as Pakistan is concerned, and I link it again with the kind of platforms which you mentioned. I was at sea as a commander during Parakram. I was at sea after the Pulwama attack in 2019 as fleet commander. So gap of almost 17, 18 years. And both times, my personal experience tells me that just because we had a particular kind of platform at sea, and that was aircraft carrier with aircraft on board, with the kind of reach which we had, no Pakistani aircraft ship which you couldn't see, we don't know about the submarine, could come anywhere less than 300 kilometers from our force. And we were operating at sea. Why? Because there was a deterrence of an aircraft carrier which can launch its helicopters, which can launch its fixed-wing aircraft and take on their maritime patrol aircraft. They can take on any ships. They remained bottled up within 50 miles, 60 miles from their bases. So that is the deterrence which the platform which you mentioned. Every platform is vulnerable. As I said, in this day and age, the battle space transparency is almost complete. And therefore, everybody is vulnerable. How?
Let me,
But
for a
there are
moment,
means to defend that.
talk about, since Rahul mentioned numbers, when we look at the US Navy numbers, when you look at the Indian Navy numbers, and let me now take it to Quad, and Quad is a civilian grouping, I know, but there's also the Malabar series, and Malabar is not a civilian grouping. Do you see a bigger role for Malabar series of exercises in the times to come? And that is again, for the benefit of some of our viewers, you have India, United States, Japan, Australia, pooling in their resources to checkmate an expansionist power.
You have very rightly said that Quad is a civilian thing, looking at different things beyond security. Malabar is not a grouping against any particular nation. That should be very clear. It's a congregation of 4 partner navies to operate together, to learn from each other, learn the best practices, and if required, be able and be willing to communicate and carry out various operations, which could be in less than war situations. It is a proven fact, everybody understands, including the largest navy, that no navy in the world has got the kind of resources to address the challenges of today in the maritime domain especially. Because as you are aware, the 71% of the Earth's surface is water, seawater, oceans. And that is one thing which is accepted by everybody. And therefore, there's a need for us to collaborate. We need for us to engage with our partner nations. And we are doing it not only in the construct of Malabar, but there are various trilateral constructs, there are bilateral constructs. Of course, we are doing under the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Sagar, which he had enunciated in 2015. This is the 10th year now, as we speak. And we are engaging with our partner nations in the Indian Ocean region and beyond. So Malabar is, of course, is one of the prime multilateral exercises, I would say, multilateral groupings, and we are continually and continuously learning from each other.
No, because now you've got AUKUS, right? Australia, UK, the United States. Should it be IAUKUS? Like, should India also in some way get attached? Because this is largely for the Indo-Pacific region. Do you see, like we've got with the Quad, which is more strategic, more diplomatic, to build on the maritime and military dimension of AUKUS by adding an I to it?
That is, I think, a political decision, government decision, and whatever decision the government takes, that I think armed forces will follow it.
May I for a moment, Admiral, take you to another threat that we face? Very recently, Taiwan caught a Chinese ship, and this Chinese cargo vessel, so-called cargo vessel, was cutting undersea cables, and they apprehended the staff. Is this grey zone warfare one of the biggest threats we face, either through countries like China or Pakistan that used the sea route to send in terrorists not just in 2611 but 15 years earlier, even in 1993, to land weapons in India? So, is that one of the biggest challenges that we face?
I will not say that it is one of the biggest challenges, but yeah, it is a challenge. Not only grey zone warfare, there are other forms, lawfare, hybrid warfare, there are all kinds of terms which are used. But I would agree with you that it is a threat in being. And why I say that? The words data which is the new oil, they say. 99% of world's data transits through the undersea cables. And we, not only we, but most of the advanced countries are dependent on transfer of data because all the services and all the software, etc., when we talk about how does it go, move from one country to another. Even for a common person, all of us, internet, goes through the undersea cables. So it is, I think, Jane Stowell, who is the expert in the Google undersea cable. And it was said that people feel that data is stored in cloud. It's wrong. It is stored in the ocean. So that is the importance, and that is what I think that you must have read various articles. There is a realization in the government of India that we need to address this challenge. It has not only happened in Taiwan state, it has happened elsewhere as well.
Absolutely.
And therefore, we need to have the capability, first of all, that if something of this nature were to happen, how quickly we can repair. And that is, efforts are on in that domain.
So how is artificial intelligence changing the way the Navy operates, prepares for war, and engages? And what are you doing?
It's not only artificial intelligence. Of course, we are using artificial intelligence for decision-making, supporting support systems. We are making for our predictive maintenance. We are utilizing it for campaign planning, and in all facets. We have set up a lab, AI lab within the Navy. We are learning from the industry. In fact, many of the technologies today, not only the AI, but many technologies today are actually commercial. And military is imbibing them. Many years ago, it used to be, military used to be in the forefront of developing new technologies, and then it used to go to the commercial world. But it is a good mix. We are happy with it. Starlink is one example. It's totally commercial, and it has helped whatever it has done in the Russia-Ukraine war. For your information, there is a firm called Palantir, which is a data firm. It was assessed as the most valuable defense contractor last year. And value, you are aware, it was some 174 billion or something. So that is the kind of technology which is being developed by the military and the commercial world.
There's a lot of cooperation between the Department of Defense and Silicon Valley. The Department of Defense is actively incubating a lot of startups in Silicon Valley. हमारे यहाँ ये सब इतना नहीं होता है.
No, we are doing, I think, we are doing all three arms of the forces and the MOD, DOD. I think we are in the forefront. Certainly, we are going out to the industry. We are hand-holding them. There are n number of schemes, whether it's IDEX, Aditi, Challenge, etc., which are there in the policy level. But talking of the Navy itself, I can tell you that we formed something called as Navy's Innovation and Indigenization Organization a few years back. And there is an arm of that, which is Technology Development and Acceleration Cell, which has gone to the industry, and I'll be happy to tell you that we have indigenized almost 50,000 items. Apart from that, we realized that there are a lot of startups, young people who really want to do something, and they have got the wherewithal, but they have no knowledge about the processes and procedures. So last year we commissioned two task forces, special task forces, each headed by a Rear Admiral rank, whose job is to proactively engage with the industry, whether it is DPSUs, PSUs, startups, or private industry, MSMEs, and then handhold them and tell them exactly that if you have this technology, this is what is our requirement. Can you do this in this time frame? So it is a work in progress. Atmanirbharta per se and self-reliance and this infusion of niche and disruptive technologies, like I said, is a work in progress. There are miles to go, and we are preparing to travel that arduous mile till we come to fruition.
Admiral Tripathi, in the contest at the geostrategic high table against China, it is the maritime domain which is at the forefront and at the bleeding edge of what the nature of this battle looks like. So having a strong, effective, potent blue water navy is a national asset, and we wish you all the best for being so candid in your responses and for taking out time and joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It is a
Thank you
pleasure.
very much. Thank you, sir.